Everybody, JC here with another T&I toy review, and today we're taking a look at another of Funko Toys Game of Thrones Legacy Collection 6-inch action figures. Specifically, we're taking a look at the Hound figure. The figure comes packaged in the standard window box type packaging. For this particular figure, we have some gray highlights, gray and black highlights, and then down below we have the Hound crest and the name of the figure. Up at the top we have the Game of Thrones Legacy Collection and the number 3. This is the third figure in the first wave of their 6-inch Legacy Collection Game of Thrones line. On the one side we see again the Game of Thrones logo, the Hound crest, and the name of the character. And then on the other side we have a window so we can see the figure from the side. And then on the back we have a picture of the Hound on the left side from the TV series, and then on the right side we have a listing of all 6 figures in the first wave. Okay, so let's get this open and take a look at the figure inside. Okay, so here's a look at the figure outside of the packaging. Overall, I would say that I think they've done a pretty good job with this one as far as capturing the actor's likeness from the TV show with the figure. Definitely the best out of the 4 that we've looked at in this first wave so far. The only complaint I would have is I do think that they should have probably added a little bit more disfiguration on the left side of the face. If you're not familiar with the Hound character from the show, basically he's had his left side of his face burnt, and so there should be, it's not like it's burnt off or anything, but definitely I think in the show his face is a little more disfigured than what we see with this figure. You know, you see some pinkish burn marks like right near the hairline on his left side, but for the most part the face does not look very disfigured. And so I think they could have made it just a little bit more disfigured to be more accurate to the show. But otherwise, I think they did a great job of capturing the likeness of the actor with this one. And definitely better than the Ned Stark figure, which I think the likeness was horrible, or even Jon Snow and Daenerys, which I thought were okay, but certainly not dead on. Other details, I think they did a good job capturing, like the chainmail. The chainmail looks really nice, and the sculpted textures on his chest with the armor pieces on his arms look really good, very accurate to the show. He's got just the basic brown pants, and then he's got the metal armor pieces for his boots and shin guards. So I think they did a good job with the overall likeness of this figure. Now, where this figure has problems, unfortunately, is with quality control. We've had a number of quality control issues with all the figures so far in this wave, but this one is by far the worst. Okay, so first of all, I just want to warn you to be careful when you're taking this figure out of the packaging. The figure comes with 2 swords. One sword comes in the sheath that's attached to his back. This sheath is not removable, and as I said, the figure comes packaged with the sword in the sheath. So what you want to be careful of is, because the sword is basically a very thin piece of plastic, and it's very brittle plastic, that you don't want to get the sword handle caught on the blister shell, this blister packaging that the figure comes in when you take it out of the box. You want to be careful that when you're pulling the figure out of that the handle does not get stuck on that plastic. Basically what happened with mine is, as I was pulling him out, I didn't notice that it had gotten caught on the piece of plastic, and I pulled a little bit too hard and it almost snapped the handle off. I actually had to do a little glue work to get, to reattach the handle, because it had almost completely broken off. And it wasn't like I just yanked it hard. I just tugged on it and it almost snapped off. So be very careful when you're taking the figure out of the packaging with the sword. Okay, so for accessories, the figure comes with 2 swords. The previous sword I mentioned that comes in the sheath that's attached on the figure's back, and this is a very basic sword. It's got brown handle, and then just basically a basic blade with a little indentation along the middle of the blade on both sides. and this is the longer of the two swords. It comes with a second sword, which is just a little bit shorter, and for the most part, the blade is pretty much the same. The handle is a little bit different. There's no brown on the handle. It's basically a metallic type metal, and then it's got these little curved pieces on the end of the handle, and it's got the round knob on the back of it. Now this sword has its own sheath that is detachable from the figure, and you can really put either sword in either sheath. Even though this sword is a little bit shorter, both sheaths and both swords are basically interchangeable. So if you want this sword on his back, you can do that. Now the other accessory this figure comes with is he comes with his Hound Helmet that you see him wearing in one or two of the episodes. Now it's got some nice sculpting details on it, and it looks like it's an actual, armored helmet, which is pretty cool. But in fact, what it is just really a soft rubber. So there's no articulation in the jaw or anything, but because it's soft rubber, you can push it closed. Though, like when you have it on the figure's head, if you can push it closed, but then it's just going to come right back open. But because it's soft plastic, basically all you do is you just squeeze the thing over the head and just kind of push down on it, and it fits pretty well. I like overall how they did this accessory. When I first saw it in the packaging, I thought it was hard plastic, so I think they did a really good job with the sculpting on this helmet piece, and it looks pretty good on his helmet, on his head. It fits pretty well and everything. And like I said, because it's just soft, you can kind of push it closed, but it's just going to come right back open. And then to take it off, you just pull it off. And I haven't had any issues getting it on his head or off his head, so hopefully you won't either with your figure. Okay, so for another quality control issue I had with this figure has this rubber piece that's basically like a loop on his belt that comes attached on the figure. Basically, it just, it's not meant to be removable. Unfortunately, because I tugged on it a little bit, and again, it's not like I pulled on it hard, I just kind of tugged on it a little bit, it came right off. It's just attached with glue, and so it's not very strong glue apparently, and so be very careful when you're messing with that piece. And basically, the way the loop is on there, it makes it seem like you could like put this other sword that's loose in the loop so that you could have him wear his sword on his belt. But the loop is really too small for the sheath itself to fit into, so don't try and jam that sheath in there, trying to get it in there, because I can almost guarantee if you do, that little piece is just going to come right off. Now, if you want to just stick the sword in there without the sheath, the sword fits loosely enough that it shouldn't be too much of a problem. I mean, I would still be careful, but you could just stick the sword in there so you could have the sword on his belt. But don't try and stick that loose sheath in there, because you'll end up just pulling this piece of rubber right off. Okay, and so for another quality control issue that I have with my figure is you'll notice that both of the hands are sculpted in the open position. So he's got two swords, and so logically you would think that you should be able to fit both swords into each hand. Unfortunately, the problem is, at least with my figure, and I don't know if this is with all the figures or if it was just an error with my figure, but there is no give between the fingers and where the thumb meet. Basically, this is the fingers are attached to the thumb, so you can't I mean, obviously it's a hard plastic; they're not articulated figures or fingers, but normally with a figure, you can kind of bend the fingers back a little bit to like wedge a gun or a sword in between the thumb and the fingers, but not on my figure. On both hands, the thumbs are attached to the fingers, so you cannot open those holes up anymore. So with the one sword that's got the thin handle, you can just kind of push the handle through the hole as is. You don't need to open the fingers and the thumb anymore to get that one in. But with the other sword that's got this round knob at the end of it, unfortunately, you cannot get it in to the hand, either hand, without being able to kind of pry open the fingers from the thumb. So essentially with my figure, I cannot get him to hold the second sword in either hand. So again, I don't know if that's the case with all the figures or if it was just an error on my figure. But that's something you want to be wary of, is, to see if the fingers are actually attached to the thumb. If that's the case, you're probably not going to be able to get him to hold both swords in his hands. Okay, so scale-wise, this figure is definitely the tallest figure in the first wave, which is accurate. In the TV show, Hound is a very tall and big character. The figure stands at just about 6 3/4 inches tall. And here you can see him next to the other 3 figures that we've looked at in the first wave, Ned Stark, Jon Snow, and Daenerys. So scale-wise, I think they've done a pretty good job with this one. For articulation-wise, first of all, I just want to warn that, at least with my figure, the joints on this figure are very tight, especially with the ankles. In fact, they were so tight that when I tried to move them, I snapped one of the ankles off. This is the second time I've had a problem with joints breaking off on the figure. So be very careful. If the joints tend to be very brittle on these figures, so if you've got tight joints, you probably want to take a blow dryer to it or something before you try and move it, because if you try and force it at all, you're probably going to likely break the joints on these figures. So just be wary of that. Okay, so for the head, he's got some back movement, but not too much. But he can look down pretty good, and he can look left and right. He's got the long hair, but it's a soft rubbery material, so it doesn't really hinder the movement of the head too much. Now, also, I kind of want to note that I didn't mention before is they've kind of painted. He's got this long beard on his face, and so they've kind of actually painted some of that beard on his neck. So when you look at the figure head on, it looks fine. It can look kind of funny because it looks like brown paint on his neck when you're looking at it like from underneath. But I just wanted to point that out. So anyway, he's got the standard ball hinge joints at the shoulder, and he's got the armor pieces, but the shoulder pads are basically a soft rubber, so again, they don't really prohibit the movement of the arm too much. You can see he can get the arm fully outwards, and he's got good rotation there. He's got the swivel just above the elbow, and he's got a single hinge joint at the elbow, so he can bend his arm about that much. And he's got, again, this weird piece of armor that's just a soft piece of rubbery plastic that sticks out. And then he's got swivel wrists. No hinges at the wrist, just swivels on this one. He does not have any midsection articulation, no swivel or anything. So it would be, it'd be nice if maybe they gave him some swivel. I mean, he's got armor pieces on, so he probably wouldn't have too much movement there at the midsection, but I think a swivel joint at least would have been nice. Then with the legs, he's got the standard ball hinges like with all the other figures, so he can do the splits. He's got the swivel there at the thigh, which on mine again is kind of tight. And then he's got the double hinged knees. So he's got good bending at the knees. And then he's got the ankle hinge pivots at the ankle. He's got the pivot at the ankle. But again, mine were very tight. As I said before, I tried to, on his right leg, I tried to move the foot, and I ended up snapping the joint right off. So just be very careful when you're trying to move those joints if they're tight at all. You want to try and loosen them up before you really try and force them, because they will probably just snap off. Okay, so that's my review. Overall, I think they did a good job with this one as far as capturing the actor's likeness. I think the details with the chainmail and everything are really nice. But my big problems with this figure is with quality control. Just way too many problems with this figure. I've had some issues with pretty much every figure in this line so far, but by far this one was the worst. And so I think Funko, if they want consumers to embrace these new 6-inch figures, are really going to have to address these quality control issues going forward. I realize this is their first foray into the 6-inch articulated figure market, but consumers are still having to pay $20 a piece for these figures, and they're going to want to expect better quality and figures that aren't just going to break right out of the packaging. So that's my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, I'll check you later.